Hey guys and girls, I hope you're all well today. So a quick few minutes politics video. You noticed I don't really do politics very often on the channel anymore, but it's going to become a bit more regular at the moment because there does seem to be some big meaty stuff to talk about, as you will be aware. And I think it is an important time also in our country's history. I know that sounds melodramatic, but I think things are really at an extreme sort of level for us now. And as far as I'm concerned, the biggest thing and the biggest problem and biggest thing holding our country back is this awful, terrible government, which we need to get out of power as soon as possible. And so I think really for the next few weeks or however long, I'm going to be spending a bit of time on videos like this, just kind of spreading the word and kind of getting out there some of the news and some of the stuff behind them, and just why they are so unfit for government and why they are such a bad government, and essentially just it's not just that they're incompetent, it's the fact that they are really a nasty group of people, and the way they run the country is to divide and to spread hate amongst people. So it's important to get that message out, and just to say that no matter what you think of Keir Starmer as Labour leader, no matter what you think of the current Labour setup, at the end of the day, they are the lesser of two evils. The country as a whole would be in a much better state and can move forward if we did have a Labour government. Any Labour government would be better than the current government. It is the message I'm going to send. But just to pick up a couple of the threads and to follow up from my last video to do with obviously the racist abuse at the football, online, social media, that sort of stuff. And obviously something which happened this week in Parliament, where the Coventry South MP for Labour, Zarah Saltana, she spoke up against the racism coming from this government and the whole tone. The fact that before the Euros they sort of decreed and sort of got on the backs of people who were the whole taking the knee gesture, dismissed it as gesture politics. That was Priti Patel in particular. Also, them obviously failing to condemn the people who booed that gesture, the Black Lives Matter gesture. And obviously we've seen the hypocrisy this week, where now this government are obviously coming out in favour of the England Stars and standing up for them, saying we will not tolerate racism. Yet it was them who earlier on this summer stoked racism. So Serrana quite rightly called this out, and she made some very strong and pointed comments, sort of following on from Tyrone Ming's comments, where he didn't mix any words with his response to the government. But another point she made is to do with the fact that Boris Johnson in the past has been caught making racist comments. So the famous comment he made in his publication, in his article, where he referred to Muslims as like letterboxes, Muslims wearing burqas. So that comment should not be forgotten in all this. It was only in 2018, just a few short years ago. And what more proof do you want really than our current Prime Minister is a racist, is a bigot? It's all there in the comment. So she was quite right to bring that back up. And she was actually really brilliant in her speech and the way she took the government to account. And she's only 27-year-old. She is of Asian descent, so that's important as well. She's someone who understands these things. An example of a young, bright politician from a diverse background who can add some fresh ideas and inject some life. So who better really to represent Labour and be involved in the mix. Made these comments and the challenge she put up, and the disgraceful response from the Tories. Reason the Prime Minister wasn't on hand or didn't respond to this, he decided to duck away. Priti Patel was nowhere to be found either, so it was left over to Victoria Atkins to step in, and her response was truly a slap in the face. It was absolutely woeful, patronising way, told Zarah to tone down. She kept saying, basically, you're shouting over me, this is not the tone, we need to have a proper conversation, stuff like that. She at one point said, well, surely you're not accusing the Prime Minister and the Home Secretary of racism, because, surely that can't be true. And you just have to take all of that in. What a shallow response it was. First of all, Anna was shouting because she's passionate. I mean, maybe look that up. Second point, she was shouting because you weren't engaging with her. You weren't answering her question. You were basically just swatting it away with feeble excuses. Not even excuses, really. She didn't even address the comments. The points were made about examples of racism, and yet there was nothing. There was no denial, there was no excuse, there was just nothing. Said, surely you can't be suggesting. Well, she's just named a very good example. She referred to the comment about Muslim women made by Boris Johnson in his article. That's a perfect example of a racist comment, and yet for some reason that didn't seem to register with Victoria Atkins. She just swatted it away, says, oh, no, surely you're not saying they can be racist. Come on, what were you thinking? And the whole tone it down comment is so patronising and kind of racist in itself. Disconnect and the feeble response to racism this week from the government, absolutely disgraceful. And just following on from that, I will just flag this up and say that there is a petition on Change UK, or just Change, I think it might be, which I came across today for another channel, and the petition is to ban any racists from football matches in the future. So definitely something that's worth signing. The link to that in the description of this video, and you can go and sign it. Also, if you wish to help them a bit further, you can donate a few pounds, sort of to help more people see the petition. The government's pathetic gesture of levelling things up from Boris Johnson since becoming Prime Minister in 2019 we've seen very little from him. We've seen mostly gestures, policies put forward, but very little have been acted on, and there's very little to show for it, for all his talk of levelling things up. Just a couple things to sort of go over of like the Metro Mayor system, making that wide in the UK, devolving power to them. Well, it sounds good in theory. He made this comment about, we'll do it to a point. It seems like he was drawing a line at giving devolving powers to what he calls the loony Labour left. So let's just look at that for a minute. I'm not quite sure who the loony left are. Second of all, calling doesn't help anyone, that childish sort of name calling. I think that's definitely a staple of this government and why they're so unlikable. It's childish. You should talk as adults, you should be sensible. Name calling like that doesn't do anyone any favours. And third of all, if you're going to devolve power, then devolve power. You don't pick and choose based on people and towns who politics you agree or don't agree with. The idea of devolving power is to give more power to local towns, whether they're Tory or Labour or whatever the case may be. That generally is a good thing. It is a good system, and to use those powers to help people in the community, rather than obviously everyone relying so much on the laws of the land, if you like, and what filters down from Westminster. There has to be a bit more flexibility. If you devolve power to them and then they kind of make a hash of it, or things don't go too well, then obviously they're sort of the ones who can be blamed. But at least devolve power in the first place, and don't pick and choose. Give it to basically everyone, or as many people as possible. You don't get to pick and choose just because they're on, as he calls it, the quote-unquote loony left. For an example in Sheffield, which was mentioned in The Guardian today, where a lot of these contracts and a lot of the perks that then the Prime Minister has been offering out has gone to kind of people who are friends of his, people who can sort of do him favours in a way. He hasn't filtered down to people on the council or people in that town who really need it. Thing to point out is that as part of his thing, he's talked about transport and linking the country up and making it more level like that, talking about linking the north up more with the south, the bridge from Northern Ireland to France, and make a link from there, and linking up different northern towns with, and in as much as 4 million on this. Some of that would be nice and stuff, but if you ask most people, most voters, whether that's a waste of money and what things to spend that sort of money on, like education, like health, like housing and various other things, I'm sure they would say, yeah, spend the money on something else. Something like he's talking about is a bonus. It shouldn't come ahead of those other things. A lot of these links are kind of already in place anyway. I think it is quite easy to get from a certain amount, of northern town to southern town. I don't think this should be a priority, building bridges, building like transport links. That's not really what levelling up is. It's only really a drop in the ocean. It seems to me then the Prime Minister's promises and his whole thing about levelling up is just a slogan, and it's pretty weak sauce. So that's my thoughts. Let me know your thoughts on the subjects I've spoken about. The link to that petition in the description of the video. Have a good weekend. See you later, guys.